What if the plate beneath your dinner was more valuable than the meat on top of it? You push open the tavern door in England, sometime around the year 1340. Cold rain follows you inside. The room is dark, except for the glow of firelight reflecting through smoke thick enough to sting your eyes. Wet wool hangs beside the hearth. Mud clings to boots scattered near the entrance. Somewhere in the room, somebody is coughing. A tavern keeper slams something heavy onto the table in front of you. Not a plate? Bread. A thick square slab of dark maslin bread, baked yesterday on purpose, so it will not collapse under hot stew. Dense, hard around the edges. Gray-brown in color, with bits of bran still visible in the crust. This is your trencher, your plate, your bowl, part of your meal. And before this night is over, someone else may eat it after you. Hollywood taught us to imagine medieval England as endless feasts, roasted boars turning over giant fires, noblemen tearing apart entire chickens with greasy hands, goblets overflowing with wine. But most people in medieval England never saw anything remotely close to that life. The real medieval table was practical, repetitive, engineered for survival, and surprisingly sophisticated. Every piece of food served a second purpose. Every calorie mattered. Every crumb moved through a system designed to waste almost nothing. Even the plate itself. And the longer you sit in this tavern, the stranger the system becomes. Because the pot cooking over the fire has not been emptied in days. And the meat inside it may have been dead for months. The tavern revolves around the pot. It hangs above the fire suspended from an iron hook, blackened by years of smoke. The liquid inside barely resembles modern soup. It is thick, dense, somewhere between stew and paste. Steam rises constantly from the surface, while bubbles break slowly through layers of peas, onions, and animal fat. This is pottage. For most of medieval England, this was not one meal among many. This was the meal. The same pot remains over the fire day after day. New water is added as old water evaporates. New vegetables are thrown in each morning. Old ingredients continue breaking apart beneath the surface. Turnips soften into the broth. Dried peas dissolve into starch. Leeks release sweetness after hours of simmering. Nothing is discarded unless absolutely necessary. The result is a constantly evolving food system that stretches resources across time. Modern kitchens separate meals into clean beginnings and endings. Medieval kitchens did not have that luxury. Fuel was expensive. Lighting fires required labor. Cooking once and maintaining heat continuously was more efficient than restarting from scratch every day. So the pot lived. Sometimes the stew became thin enough to drink from a cup. Other days it thickened into something almost solid. Travelers described pottage so dense it could cling to bread without dripping. And inside that stew was the ghost of meat. Not chunks, not steaks, not portions. Memory. A salted pork bone, a scrap of bacon, a piece of smoked ham simmered until its flavor leaked into everything around it. Most people did not eat meat directly. They ate vegetables flavored by meat. Protein stretched across an entire household through broth rather than quantity. To modern eyes, it looks poor. In reality, it was nutritional engineering built for survival. And survival in medieval England depended on preservation, because fresh meat was dangerous luxury. The pork in your stew may have been slaughtered 6 months ago. That is not exaggeration. In medieval England, animals were usually killed during late autumn when temperatures dropped and winter feed became scarce. Once slaughtered, the meat immediately entered preservation systems designed to keep it edible for months. Salt became everything. Entire pork cuts disappeared beneath thick layers of coarse salt packed into barrels. Beef strips were smoked over slow fires until hardened. Fish were dried in coastal winds before being stacked by the thousands inside wooden casks. Fresh meat existed briefly. Preserved meat fed the year. And preserved meat changed taste completely. Salted pork was so intensely salty, it often needed soaking overnight before cooking. Even then, the flavor remained aggressive. One small piece could season an entire pot of pottage. Medieval cooks learned to build entire meals around concentrated, preserved flavors. But no preserved food mattered more than herring. Barrels of herring traveled inland from the North Sea in astonishing quantities. Cheap, durable, packed with protein, perfect for a Christian society required to avoid meat for nearly a third of the calendar year. Fridays, Lent, religious fasting days. Fish replaced meat constantly. For many families, herring became so common it bordered on psychological exhaustion. Medieval writings complain openly about endless fish meals. Yet the system worked. Herring survived transportation. It survived storage. It survived winter. And most importantly, it survived hunger. The medieval world was not organized around abundance. It was organized around preventing famine one season at a time. Which is why even bread carried social meaning. You could see class differences before a person ever spoke. All you had to do was look at their loaf. The darker the bread, the harder your life probably was. A nobleman ate soft white wheat bread, fine texture, expensive flour, carefully sifted. A laborer ate maslin. Maslin bread combined rye, barley, oats, and lower quality grains into dense dark loaves that could survive rough handling and long storage. It was heavy enough to feel almost damp inside. Chewy enough to exhaust the jaw. Sometimes bits of husk remained inside the flour because perfect milling required money. But maslin had advantages. It spoiled slower. It filled the stomach longer. And when dried into trenchers, it became edible tableware. The trencher solved multiple problems simultaneously. Wooden bowls were expensive. Ceramic plates broke easily. Washing required labor and water. Bread absorbed grease naturally while adding calories afterward. Nothing wasted. If wealthy households finished eating before the trencher collapsed, servants often collected the soaked bread and distributed it to the poor outside. The meal continued beyond the table. Food systems in medieval England constantly looped back into themselves. Animal fat-flavored vegetables. Old bread became plates. Bones thickened broth. Ale mash fed livestock. Ash from fires entered gardens. Efficiency was survival. And survival required flavor. Because medieval food was not bland. That myth only exists because modern people misunderstand what medieval cooks were trying to accomplish. Taste medieval pottage properly, and the first thing you notice is not weakness. It is intensity. Modern audiences imagine medieval peasants eating dull gray mush because they assume poverty means lack of culinary knowledge. But medieval cooks understood flavor extremely well. They had to. Repetition demanded it. Onions, garlic, and leeks formed the foundation of nearly every savory dish. Herbs were added aggressively, not delicately. Sage, thyme, parsley, fennel, hyssop. Handfuls, not pinches. Then came acidity. Verjuice made from sour crab apples or unripe grapes cut through heavy animal fat the same way lemon juice works today. Mustard appeared constantly, freshly ground into sharp pastes, powerful enough to overpower salted pork. Even common tavern food attacked the palate deliberately. Wealthier households pushed flavor even further. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, saffron, ginger. Imported spices became symbols of status because global trade already connected England to distant worlds most villagers would never see. Spices were displayed almost like treasure. But ordinary people still ate highly seasoned food using local ingredients. Medieval cuisine was herb-heavy, acidic, smoky, fermented, and far more pungent than most modern recreations. The problem was never flavor. The problem was monotony. When your dinner depends on peas, cabbage, onions, and preserved fish for months at a time, flavor becomes psychological survival. And nothing helped people endure repetition more than ale. Even children drank it. Because sometimes the safest liquid in town was fermented. The ale is cloudy, warm, slightly sour, and safer than water. Nobody in 1340 understood bacteria, but people observed patterns. Wells near crowded settlements caused sickness. Stagnant water killed people. Fermented drinks seemed safer. So medieval England drank ale constantly. Men, women, children. Small ale contained low alcohol levels, often around 2%, weak enough for daily hydration. Without hops, medieval ale spoiled quickly, meaning brewing happened continuously. Taverns depended on rapid turnover. Alewives produced fresh batches every few days, signaling availability with poles or branches outside their homes. The drink itself barely resembled modern beer. It was grainy, thick, sometimes almost resembling liquid bread. Yet ale carried calories, hydration, and relative safety in a world where all three mattered. And taverns became more than drinking spaces. They became information systems. Because once people gathered around warmth and food, everything else followed naturally. News, rumors, jobs, religion, politics, fear, hope. The tavern was not entertainment attached to society. The tavern was society. A traveler arriving from Canterbury carries more valuable information than gold. He knows which bridges collapsed after the storm, which villages have plague rumors, where tax collectors were last seen, which roads are safe after dark. In a world without newspapers, radio, or mass literacy, information traveled through mouths, memory, and tavern benches. The medieval tavern became a living network. Merchants hired laborers beside the fire. Pilgrims exchanged warnings with farmers. Disputes were settled informally before witnesses drinking ale nearby. Traveling friars preached morality between meals. Dice games erupted in corners, while traders negotiated wool prices beside them. The shared bowl of pottage acted almost like social currency. Eating together granted temporary access to the network. Class divisions still existed, brutally so, but the tavern softened them briefly. A farmer and merchant might share information they would never exchange elsewhere. Travelers carried stories between counties the same way modern servers carry data between cities. The tavern connected England together, one smoky room at a time. And after hours inside, something unexpected happened. The place stopped feeling primitive. It started feeling familiar. After the pottage comes frumenty. Warm wheat grains boiled slowly in milk, thickened with egg yolks, sweetened with honey, sometimes colored gold with saffron if the household could afford it. Soft, sweet, comforting. A medieval person never used the phrase comfort food, but they understood the concept completely. Food did not only keep people alive, it stabilized emotion, especially during winter, especially during uncertainty, especially after exhaustion. Dried figs and raisins arrived through trade routes stretching farther than most villagers could imagine. Honey replaced sugar for nearly everyone outside the elite. Small luxuries appeared occasionally in otherwise harsh diets, reminders that survival and pleasure were not always enemies. Even feast days served psychological purpose. Roasted swans, decorative pies, marzipan sculptures, public spectacle reminded communities that abundance still existed somewhere beyond ordinary struggle. But most nights were simpler. A bench, a fire, ale, pottage, human voices layered through smoke. And for a few hours, the cold outside stopped mattering. It is tempting to look backward and see only misery, mud, disease, salted fish, smoke-blackened ceilings. And yes, medieval life was brutally hard by modern standards. But the deeper you look, the more visible the intelligence becomes. The food systems were adaptive. The kitchens minimized waste with astonishing efficiency. Communal eating created information exchange. Preservation technologies stretched survival across seasons. Flavor systems evolved to fight monotony. The medieval tavern was not evidence of primitive people failing to build civilization. It was civilization functioning exactly as it needed to. Messy, dense, practical, human. And hidden underneath all the barrels and trenchers is something recognizable across centuries. The need to enter from the cold, to sit down, to hear human voices nearby, to feel safe long enough to eat. That need never disappeared. Picture the tavern one final time. Dusk settles outside. Rain strikes the roof in uneven rhythms. Smoke curls through dark ceiling beams stained black by decades of fire. A traveler pushes through the door exhausted from the road. His boots are soaked. His hands ache from cold. Someone near the hearth slides a bowl toward him without speaking. The stew is only peas, onions, turnips, and the faint shadow of bacon simmered into the broth. But it is hot, and for one quiet moment, that is enough. 700 years separate that traveler from us. We have electricity, refrigeration, antibiotics, highways, grocery stores, and clean water flowing from metal pipes. The barrels disappeared. The trenchers disappeared. The perpetual stew pot disappeared. But the feeling did not. The relief of warmth, the comfort of food, the strange peace that comes from sitting beside other people while the world outside grows dark. History often feels distant until you find the moments that survived intact. And maybe that is why these old taverns still fascinate us. Not because medieval people were different from us, but because, beneath the smoke and salt and rough bread, they were painfully familiar. If you enjoyed stepping inside the forgotten realities of the past, subscribe to Shadows of Valhalla and join us for more journeys into the world's history left behind. Because sometimes the fastest way to understand ourselves is to sit beside the fire of someone long gone.